Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do some hypothesis testing. First with one sample, and then we'll see about two samples later on. All right, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to test some claim about the value of a population parameter. All right, somebody may have made a statement about a certain mean of a population, and we want to test the validity of that claim based on samples. Right? So for example, a manufacturer advertises its new hybrid car has a mean gas mileage of 50 miles per gallon. If you suspect the mean mileage is not 50 miles per gallon, how could you show the advertisement is false? So how could you use data to substantiate an argument that this advertisement is false? Well, that's what we're going to learn how to do here. Okay, so what we're going to make is a statistical hypothesis. So some statement about a population parameter. Now, all this is going to be very particular because there has to be a very agreed upon way of looking at this. So it takes a little while to get used to, but once we're used to it, you'll find it makes a lot of sense. So we're going to have a pair of hypotheses. One that represents the claim, and the other is the complement. In other words, everything else outside of the claim. Basically, we're trying to split a situation into one possibility or another. So just two possibilities. So what we're really going to have is that if one thing is not true, then the other is true, and vice versa. So we're always going to be splitting it in two. And so how we do that is a very particular setup. All right, so the hypotheses are going to be called the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. Okay, and one of them is going to be the claim, and one of them is going to be basically what's, the other half of the situation, not the claim. All right, so let's see how this works. So how do you state each hypothesis? All right, a null hypothesis, and this symbol we'll use a lot, and people say it in many different ways. H0, H sub-0, H naught, because often the sub-zero is called naught in mathematics. So we'll maybe use different versions of that. Okay. So that null hypothesis is a statistical hypothesis that contains the statement of equality. So that's the important thing is, whichever statement has the equality in it, whether it's just purely inequality, or it's less than or equals to, or greater than or equals to, that's going to be the null hypothesis. Has to be. Then the alternative hypothesis is the complement of that. So it's everything else. So that would then have things that don't involve the equality. So that would have a greater than, strictly greater than, not equals to, or strictly less than. Okay. Oh, and here's the alternative hypothesis, HA or H sub A. And so I've noted that there's a bunch of different ways that we can read these things. Okay. So you're going to have to see it in action for it to make some sense. All right. So to write the null and alternative hypotheses, basically we're going to take the verbal or printed claim made about the population parameter, normally just in plain English, and put it into a mathematical statement. And then we'll write the complement, the other half of it, and then we'll figure out how to organize these. Okay, so our hypothesis test is going to look like one of these. All right. So these are three different versions. Notice in every case, the null hypothesis has the equals version. So less than or equals to, greater than or equals to, equals. And the alternative hypothesis does not. Okay, so what we're basically doing is, whichever one of these we use, we're assuming that mu equals this k value, whatever value we're trying to compare to. And then we'll see how likely this is based on what the data shows us, the sample data shows us. All right, so let's get into some examples. State the null and alternative hypothesis and identify which represents the claim. All right. A school publicizes that the proportion of its students who are involved in at least one extracurricular activity is 61%. Okay, so I'm going to let proportion just be P. Right? And what is this statement really saying? Well, the school seems to be saying that P equals 61%, or in other words, 0.61, because it's saying that the proportion of students is 61%. So that's one of the statements there. Now, where does that go? Well, since it has the equals, that has to be the null, H0. Okay. And that means that the rest of it, so if the H0 is P equals 0.61, then the rest of it is simply P not equals 0.61. All right. So that's how we set up the null and alternative. Now, which one was the claim? Well, the school is saying that P is equal to 0.61. So this is the claim. In this case, the null hypothesis is the claim. All right. A car dealership announces that the mean time for an oil change is less than 15 minutes. Okay. Mean, so we'll use mu, is less than 15 minutes. So the statement made here is that mu is less than 15. So I take a look at that. Does it involve an equality? No. So that means it has to go to the alternative. Okay, so if it's not less than 15, what is the other part? Well, it would have to be mu greater than or equals 15, because I have to cover every situation. If one part of it was just less than 15, then all the rest must be greater than or equal to 15. Now, which was the claim? Well, the car dealership was saying that the mu is less than 15. This was the claim. All right. A company advertises that the mean life of its furnaces is more than 18 years. Okay, mean mu, more than 18 years. Mu greater than 18. Again, no equality, so that has to be the alternative. What's the rest? If it's not greater than, it's less than or equals to. And again, the company said its mu was greater than 18. This is the claim. So you have to interpret what the statement being made is mathematically. If it includes an equality, then that's the null H0. If it's doesn't include the equality, then it must be the alternative, HA. And then, whichever one you have, you build the other one off of what the rest of the situation is. Then you can identify whatever the statement was saying, that's the claim.